we're registered on the appropriate portals and keep an eye for contracts and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we can be doing to be more active, to get out there and sort of make a bit more of a name for ourselves, other than just going through the procurement process?
It's a good question. So the portals themselves are a source of information. It's like a nuclear yellow pages for our tier 1 contractors. So we've got lots of data on lots of companies who want to be involved in our projects, and we share that with the tier 1 contractors, and they may look at them, they may not, they're not obliged to. I would urge organisations that, having just registered, don't sit back and wait for the phone to ring or wait for an inquiry to pop through the letterbox. You need to be out there proactively marketing yourself to the tier 1 contractors. So we've tried to make it as clear as possible who those tier 1 organisations are, with the names on our website and links to their own websites. The key there is to make sure that they are aware of you. Don't make too much of a nuisance of yourself, but make sure that they know about you as a company and what your skills and abilities are. Because some of our tier 1 contractors have a fairly mature supply chain and may be happy to stick with that mature supply chain and not really branch out and look at other suppliers. So unless you're banging on the door saying, hey, we're here, we're fairly close to the site, wouldn't it be better to use someone like us rather than drag somebody halfway across Europe to do work for us? So make yourself known, introduce yourself to the companies, get to see them where you can. There's a whole host of nuclear events take place. We'll start to organise 1 or 2 more when we get into next year in the consultation for Sizewell C, and we'll start to introduce some of the tier 1 contractors to local suppliers at that point in time. But from a Hinkley point of view, the supply chain's fairly mature, they're out there, they're all working on site. We don't do quite so many events anymore because the site's up and running and we've all got day jobs and trying to build the thing, but still get out there and bang on the doors and do your usual business development stuff.
Yep, that's great. That's
Okay.
Can I just add to that? Most of these tier 1s have their own supply chain portals, so when we did the bylaw one, we actually have to go to the bylaw supply chain and put your details in there. It becomes very repetitive, but they're kind of fundamentally the same, so just keep doing that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know what? Well, I've got a question for Chris. You mentioned that you built the jetty at Conwich for the delivery from Avonmouth of the turbines and the big nuclear stuff. Are you planning also to use that for the aggregates? And,
So what you saw on the picture, it's not a jetty at Cummich, it's a wharf.
oh, right, okay.
So we have 2 things. We have a wharf at Cummich, which is on the mouth of the River Parrett. It's not ideal because we've got the 2nd highest tidal range in the world at Hinkley. So when the tide goes out, it goes out a long way. So Cummich dries at low water. So to get the big bits of kit in, that's the components that form part of the reactor, the turbines themselves, very large equipment items will come in by sea, and they'll go into Avonmouth, they'll get transferred or stored at Avonmouth, popped onto a barge and hauled down by a shipping company into Cummich. The barge is flat bottom, so when the tide goes out it can sit on the bottom and it gets unloaded there and then taken round to Hinkley. To construct the power station, we have millions of cubic metres of concrete. We therefore have millions of tonnes of aggregates to bring into the site, and the road network is fairly restricted. So we've chosen at Hinkley to build a temporary jetty. You saw, I think on the video, a thing called the wave walker, which is one of these platforms with big legs and things, which walks along and does piling work. We've constructed a jetty which is half a kilometre long, goes out into the estuary. The plan being, and it'll be commissioned early next year, that we'll stop delivering aggregates by road, and that the vast majority, over 60% of the aggregates we need on the site, will come in by sea. So they'll be rail hauled or road hauled again into Avonmouth and then loaded onto a aggregate shipping vessel, which will then come down to Hinkley. It will moor up on the new jetty, and then there's an aggregate handling system which will conveyor the aggregates ashore and straight into the storage bins. So the aggregates will come in by sea into the temporary jetty, and the large stuff will go into the wharf at Cummich. It's worth adding that one of the contractors involved in the construction of the jetty, a Suffolk-based contractor from Ipswich, Red 7 Marine, have been involved in the construction of the jetty. So again, opportunities for companies on the East Coast on the project.
As you can probably imagine, obviously Hinkley Point is a little bit better connected with the motorway network than either Sizewell or Bradwell are, so
Yeah.
we understand our interest for the East Coast.
It's probably worth adding for those thinking about Sizewell, we will be producing some form of marine structure to allow us to bring the abnormal indivisible loads in. Quite what form that will take we're still working on. The aggregates for Sizewell, however, will come in by rail because it's better connected by rail than Hinkley is. So the plan for Sizewell is to put some new rail lines into the plant itself and then bring the stone in by train rather than bring it in by boat.
But would Sizewell also, the larger material, would that also be travelling by rail? You know,
No, that will come in by sea.
Any more questions?
Yes, we did.
Innovative SMEs obviously want to work massively on projects like Hinkley Point. Obviously the government funded business energy industrial strategy, but the problem we have is obviously engaging with, as you said, tier one contractors who've already got their own mature supply chain. Is there any way, I know that obviously EDF or projects of your nature can encourage the tier ones to engage better with the SMEs by offering incentives on that side? I know things like have been mentioned of SME content within major UK infrastructure projects, but I didn't know whether there's anything on Hinkley Point C or whether it would be worthwhile looking at Sizewell and Bradwell to get better engagement with the SME community on these projects.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting question. So, yes, the government is investing in trying to help the supply chain. So there's a thing called a nuclear sector deal, which was announced fairly recently. So 10 million plus pot of money made available by BEIS. And they're currently looking about how that's going to be managed and how the benefits will flow down into the supply chain. So I think earlier on in the Poundfield presentation, something called Fit for Nuclear was shown on the screen there, and the nuclear AMRC was mentioned. So for those who don't know, there's an organisation called the Nuclear Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. They are primarily part of the University of Sheffield, with input from the University of Manchester, Dalton Institute, some money from government, some money from tier one organisations such as ourselves. And for those who watch the Great British Bake Off, the gentleman who won that actually works for the nuclear AMRC, so I didn't know that until the other day. Anyway, they have a programme called Fit for Nuclear. If you Google it, what it would allow you to do is to go on there, and there's a diagnostic tool. You fill the details in, they will take a look at you as an organisation. It doesn't cost you any money, and they'll come back to you and tell you how close you are to being a nuclear supplier. And they're looking at the moment about how to develop that tool and increase the amount of training. But that depends on how much of this pot they get from government to be able to increase their training offering. But it's worth having a look. So nuclear AMRC, Google that, see what that's all about. And again, if you talk to our colleagues at the Chambers of Commerce, Essex, Suffolk and Somerset, they also know characters there and can point you in the direction of that organisation. We're also working and have been working over the years with the Chambers about providing some form of training. So we have a number of training events currently underway in the southwest, delivered jointly with an organisation called Hinkley Supply Chain, which we sponsor, but also with input from not only UK or English government, but also Welsh government, so they're putting funding into the project too. So there's quite a few training programmes underway. And as we start to move closer to Sizewell C, we will start to do a bit more on this patch as well for suppliers who want to be involved in Sizewell. But for the moment, unfortunately, there's not a huge amount happening on the east coast yet to help suppliers on Hinkley. But in terms of incentives to use local businesses, we ourselves are trying to set our stall out. So we've done an awful lot working with local businesses. You saw some stats on the movie about how much money we've already put into the local community. As we all know, we're all part of Europe at the moment, so I cannot stipulate to our tier one contractors where they spend their money. It would be contrary to procurement law, etc. So we try to encourage the use of local businesses, and I think as we get past the end of March next year, depending what happens, if we end up with some sort of fudged Brexit or whatever it may be, I think it might be easier for local companies and companies based in the UK to get work than companies who are based elsewhere in Europe. So that may assist you. I don't know yet. We just don't know what the outcome is going to be. So yes, we try to encourage companies to engage. The chambers, particularly Hinkley, Somerset Chamber at the moment, but to a greater degree will grow the other chambers, they are engaging with our tier 1 contractors to understand what it is they're delivering, and then to look at opportunities for local businesses in helping that delivery. So there's a fairly big team at Hinkley Supply Chain which is led by Somerset Chamber. They're talking to each one of our tier 1 contractors, and then for each of the packages they're looking at potential offers from local businesses to help make that connection.
In fact, it's worthwhile mentioning something about the Hinkley supply chain as well. We've had dialogue with them from Invest Essex, and they are open to introductions from businesses from Suffolk and Essex to working in partnership with businesses in the southwest to jointly bid for pieces of work. Obviously, because they're funded by local government and regional government there's got to be something in it for a southwest company, but they're seeing this as sustainability. Often if there are packages of work for a tier 1 contractor that locally within the southwest can't supply, then they'll open to working with people in other parts of the UK where nuclear new build is likely to take place, to jointly bid, and we're in dialogue with them. In fact, I'm going down to Somerset next month to have a more detailed discussion about potential collaboration with them. I'd just like to join you again with thank you for coming.